Hello everybody. I'd like to talk about the history course that I intend to put on early in the new year. But first I'd like to ask a question. Why study history? Why go to a history class? Why do history? I'll answer that, or try to answer at the end of the session if you're still with me by then. But first the story. 800 years ago, in an obscure monastery in the northeast of England, there lived a monk who kept a diary. He wrote about the harvest, he wrote about floods that happened, he wrote about illnesses, he wrote about the bees that he kept. He didn't write every day, he didn't write every month, he just wrote about things that impinged on his life, things that were important to him, like the death of an abbot. During the time that he wrote, there were 4 kings, several wars, a couple of civil wars, and a French invasion. He didn't mention any of that. He just talked about things that were important to him. 600 years earlier, another monk wrote about things that were important to the whole country as he saw it. He wrote about the doings and misdeeds of rich and powerful people who were ruining the kingdom. And in passing, he mentioned an hero, obscure at the time, but now famous. And it was the first mention of that hero, which leads me on to several other people I want to talk about. The hero in question was said to live down the road from here, Eldley Edge. He was also said to have lived in Somerset, in Devon, and even in Scotland. But in fact, he might not have lived at all. And it's not a qualification for the people we're talking about. We're going to talk about people who maybe didn't live, but the life and times are maybe interesting, like, for instance, Helen of Troy. We're also going to talk about people who've only got a tenuous link with our locality. Somebody like Lloyd George, who was born here but didn't live here for more than about 10 minutes. We can also talk about people who've got links with the Northwest, like Adolf Hitler, whose sister Bridget said that he actually came to visit her in Liverpool one time. Perhaps not. Perhaps he didn't. There was certainly a sister Bridget. She certainly lived in Liverpool. We can talk about other people as well. We can talk about a whole range of people. And we can talk about the lives and times of people on request if you want. So now, back to answering the question, why talk about history? We can talk about history because we're looking for great truths. We can talk about history because we want to learn from the past. We can talk about history because we think there might be lessons of the past. We can talk about history because we want to know who we are, what kind of people we are, and why we are like that. Or maybe, just maybe, we could hear stories about history that entertain us. Stories about beekeepers in the north of England 800 years ago.